It was the 5th day Julia hadn't come home. I brought a cake to the institute, hoping to surprise her for her birthday. Through the reinforced glass of the lab, I saw Kyle, her new mentee, covering her eyes with his hands as he presented a cake of his own, candles already lit. I tried calling. Julia ignored it 4 times before finally answering, her voice like ice. What is it? Didn't I tell you not to interrupt me when I'm working? I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. I don't have time for that kind of pointless sentimentality. She hung up. A moment later, through the window, I saw her laughing, playing along with Kyle as she closed her eyes to make a wish. The old me would have stormed in there, would have screamed, demanding to know what was going on between them. Demanded to know who she was thinking of when she blew out those candles. But this time I was just tired of fighting, ready to let go. The sky opened up without warning, a sudden downpour that trapped me at the bus stop near the institute. The cake in my hands collapsed into a pathetic slump, a mirror of myself. My phone rang. It was Julia. Her voice was flat. I'll be home later, Ethan. Stop being so dramatic. I told you this project is critical. It's bad enough that you decided to coast through life, but you don't get to sabotage my career. We've been married for years. How are you still so damn needy? A familiar red sedan sped past the bus stop, throwing up a wave of filthy water that drenched me. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw Julia, phone pressed to her ear, staring straight ahead. But Kyle, in the passenger seat, saw me. Ethan, did you lose your tongue? She snapped, annoyed by my silence. I could faintly hear a man's voice in the background. Try calm her down. I couldn't listen anymore. I ended the call. My phone battery was dead. In the final second before the screen went black, a notification popped up. Kyle had posted a news story on Instagram. Thanks to my amazing mentor for the ride home. Saved me from turning into a drowned rat. Same time next year, Julia. Promise. The screen went dark, reflecting my own face soaked. I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. I threw the ruined cake in the trash and walked home, stumbling through the storm. Julia didn't come back that night. I curled up on the sofa and fell into a fitful sleep. When I woke up the next morning, my head was swimming. I plugged in my phone. As it powered on, a missed call and a string of iMessages from Julia flooded the screen. Turning your phone off to disappear? Ethan, how long are you going to keep playing these childish games? My patience has a limit. Stop acting crazy. Something came up last night. I can clear some time for lunch today, okay? Is that enough? Can you just be reasonable for once? She always spoke to me as if she were granting me an audience. I didn't reply. Instead, my thumb moved on its own, opening Instagram to Kyle's profile. His latest post was from M. The picture was an artsy shot of a hospital hallway. In front of him, a woman with a familiar, elegant silhouette was holding up his forebag. That silhouette, from college campus to wedding aisle, I had watched over that woman for 10 years. I knew it was Julia. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I unfollowed Kyle. Then I blocked Julia's number. She was the brilliant, untouchable woman on the mountaintop. I had been climbing for too long. I couldn't go any higher. After taking some fever reducer, I dragged myself to work. The office AC was blasting, and I shivered uncontrollably while trying to handle a difficult client over Zoom. A colleague noticed how pale I was and draped a blanket over my shoulders. Before I could finish saying thanks, the world tilted and went black. I woke up in a hospital bed with Inform in my arm. A nurse told me my fever was so high I'd passed out. A woman who said she was my co-worker had driven me here. I was a little surprised. My entire department was made up of tech guys. There were no female co-workers. The nurse just smiled. She was very pretty, she added playfully. Before I could ask more, my phone rang. It was Julia, calling from a different number. You blocked me? She yelled, her voice raw with fury. Ethan, have you completely lost your mind? I told you something came up last night, and this is how you react? Do you think I have nothing better to do just like you? I was a terrible student. I'd barely scraped by to get into the same university as her, and after a difficult 4 years, I'd taken the first decent job I could find. Julia, on the other hand, had sailed through her master's and PhD programs, emerging as a rising star in the scientific community. We were from different worlds. My job, the one that paid our bills while she was in school, was utterly worthless in her eyes. I'm not making a scene, I said, my voice calm. You should get back to work. She paused, caught off guard. Her tone softened slightly. You better not be. Fine. Let's have dinner. The Cypress Room on Newberry Street. Even a meal together felt like a gift she was bestowing upon me. Okay. I didn't refuse. There were things I needed to say to her face to face. It was time to give my 10-year-long devotion a decent burial. When I got to the restaurant, Julia wasn't there yet. The maitre d' seated me with a knowing smile. Ms. Vance is one of our regulars, of course. I recognized the restaurant's opulent floor-to-ceiling windows from Kyle's Instagram. But Julia had never brought me here. The dinner rush came and went. Julia still hadn't shown up. The waiter kept glancing at me with pity. I pretended to be fascinated by the view outside. Then I saw her through the glass, a striking figure in a black dress. Her phone rang, and she stopped, then turned and hurried back toward the parking garage. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. A few minutes later, she called back. There's a problem with Kyle's part of the project. I have to go help him. Ethan, you understand, right? I wasn't surprised she was bailing. I was used to waiting. It was just that Kyle's name seemed to be coming up more and more often. Fine, go ahead. But we need to talk. Face to face. Make some time. She let out a cold laugh. What could you possibly have to talk about? It's the same old story, isn't it? I've told you, Kyle and I are just colleagues. You need to stop being so paranoid and insecure. I didn't argue. She hung up quickly. The food at the restaurant, however, was surprisingly good. Much better than anything I could make. No wonder Julia never liked my cooking. After she started at the Institute, she became even busier than during her PhD. I was worried she wasn't eating right, so I'd get up early every morning to make her a packed lunch before heading to my own job. Sometimes, delivering that lunch was the only time I'd see her all week. She told me to stop wasting my time. The food I made, she said, just wasn't to her taste. I was hurt for a while, but then I redoubled my efforts, trying to find other ways to please her. It was just like back in college. She was always the cold, unapproachable genius, and I was the moth drawn to her flame, chasing her relentlessly. In the end, I'd won. I married her. She once casually mentioned she liked a hearty beef and potato stew, so I taught myself how to make it, burning my hands countless times trying to get it just right. But I could never make it to her satisfaction. Then I met Kyle, the mentee she was always talking about. He was from the South, and he was a fantastic cook. He made, she said, the most amazing beef stew. I stopped making stew after that. When I got home, I packed a suitcase and called a realtor to ask about rentals. I didn't expect Julia to come home. She saw the suitcase and froze, her expression hardening into anger. Ethan, what is this? What new game are you playing? I figured I might as well be direct. We didn't have kids. A divorce could be clean. But before I could say the words, her phone rang. She glared at me, ready to silence it. Then she saw the name on the screen, and her expression flickered. Kyle, what's wrong? Don't panic, I'm here. I'm on my way. She caught herself, looking at me with a complex expression. Ethan, I don't want to fight. We'll talk when I get back. Kyle needs me right now. His landlord kicked him out. He has nowhere to go. For the first time, I looked at Julia and saw her clearly. In school, she was the untouchable campus queen, the genius with a halo. After graduation, she was a brilliant researcher. But did she really not understand? Why would a grown man, facing a problem, immediately call his married female mentor instead of solving it himself? Suddenly, I felt a profound sense of exhaustion. I cut her off. I even encouraged her. You should go. Don't waste any more time. It's getting late. Julia stared at me for a long moment. I'll be back soon. Wait for me. I didn't wait. After double-checking the divorce agreement I'd downloaded, I locked the door from the inside and slept until morning. It was the best sleep I'd had in months. I actually felt energized on my way to work. There were wet footprints by the door. Julia must have come back and found herself locked out. She had sent a few texts, which I ignored. Instead, I emailed her the divorce agreement. She called immediately. I didn't answer. A moment later, I got a friend request from Kyle. Ethan, please don't be mad at Julia because of me. She just feels sorry for me because my health isn't great. She can't bear to see me all alone. She was so tired after taking care of me yesterday. Can you please stop making her worry? Actually, I should thank you. Julia said I remind her of how you used to be. No wonder she took me under her wing as soon as I joined the lab. His messages grew sharper, more pointed. The old me would have been driven mad by these words, would have run to Julia and demanded an explanation. This time, I just swiped the notification away and ignored his request. At the office, I asked HR who it was that took me to the hospital. I want to thank them in person. The HR manager just gave me a cryptic smile and told me not to worry about it and to just focus on my work. I decided to buy coffee for the whole department instead. I never expected Julia to show up in my office with Kyle. I'm at the coffee shop downstairs from your building. Get down here, Ethan. That commanding tone. I knew it all too well. I valued my job, and I didn't want our personal dramas spilling into my professional life. I told my manager I had an emergency, grabbed the printed divorce papers, and went downstairs. Julia and Kyle were sitting by the window. Kyle was intimately brushing a stray strand of hair from Julia's forehead. They looked like a perfect couple. The smile in her eyes vanished the moment she saw me. There you are, Kyle, and I had to pause our work just for you. The entire project's timeline is going to be affected because of this. Ethan, can you stop this insanity? I hadn't even sat down, and already the blame was being shoveled onto my head. I don't recall inviting you for coffee. Perhaps the sarcasm on my face was too blatant. Julia froze, then hissed through clenched teeth, her anger barely contained. Ethan, Kyle suddenly stepped forward, a mask of contrition on his face. Ethan, man, you're misunderstanding her. She was worried you'd be jealous and just wanted to explain things. I feel like this is all my fault for putting her in such a difficult position, so I came with her to apologize to you personally. Julia shot me a look of pure disappointment before turning to Kyle with an apologetic expression. Kyle, you don't need to apologize. He's been like this for years. Unreasonable, jealous, his head filled with nonsense. Now he's threatening me with divorce. Her voice rose. Ethan, have I been too easy on you? Julia, I can't stand to see you so torn up, Kyle declared dramatically. Ethan, if you're angry, take it out on me. If the setting hadn't been so ridiculous, I might have actually been moved. A waitress hovered nearby, holding a tray with 2 coffees, unsure if she should approach. I wave her over. 2 Americanos. Too bitter. I never liked them. I picked one up and threw it. The dark liquid streamed down Julia's face and hair. She stared at me, utterly stunned. Kyle shrieked. Ethan, you... Julia. His eyes darted around, and then he was practically cradling her. Come after me, Ethan. Don't you dare hurt her. Do you have any idea what she's given up for you? How could you do this to her? As if waking from a trance, Julia grabbed my wrist, her grip furious. In her sudden movement, she knocked Kyle, who stumbled and fell back into his chair. Are you insane? She screamed at me. You think I won't actually go to the courthouse with you? You just try me. She was seething, but I met her gaze calmly. Just helping you clear your head. Can you understand what I'm saying now? I pulled my hand free, wiping off the coffee that had splashed onto me. She watched my every move, her expression growing darker. The simmering rage finally boiled over the moment I placed the divorce agreement on the table. You really want to divorce me? Her voice cracked, rising in disbelief. A flash of triumph crossed Kyle's face before he quickly schooled his features into a look of anguish, bowing his head to me. Ethan, I know you're upset because Julia was taking care of me. For her happiness, I'm willing to leave the Institute. I'll give up my career. Just please, stop making things so hard for her. He spoke with deep emotion, sneaking glances at Julia, waiting for her reaction. But he didn't get the scene he was hoping for. It was as if Julia hadn't heard his heartfelt declaration at all. She crumpled the divorce papers in her fist, her eyes fixed on me. Ethan, we can pretend this never happened. Let's just go home and talk. I sidestepped the hand she reached out to me, a wave of irritation washing over me. She was always so decisive when hanging up on me, when standing me up. Why couldn't she understand a simple sentence now? Julia, I'm serious. I don't want to be married to you anymore. Look over the terms. If there are no issues, just sign it. I turned to leave. For the first time in years, Julia lost her composure. Ethan, she yelled in the middle of the crowded cafe, drawing stares and whispers. This public display was exactly the kind of undignified scene she had always despised. She hated my lack of ambition. She hated that I was too clingy. She hated that I needed reassurance from her. She had always been the one on the pedestal, dispensing affection like charity, leaving me feeling like a beggar in my own marriage. And now look at her, making a scene. There's a limit to this drama. Ethan, I'm giving you an out right now. If you don't take it, you won't get another chance. Ethan, I walked faster, closer to the door. She shoved Kyle aside as he tried to hold her back and ran to block my path. Julia. Kyle had somehow knocked over his coffee cup. Shards of ceramic littered the floor, and a piece had sliced open his leg. I turned back. Julia froze, her eyes meeting mine. For a split second, I saw something that looked like a plea. Julia, it hurts so much. She glanced back at Kyle, who was now writhing in pain, then looked at me, her voice strained. Ethan, I have to get him to a hospital. I'll come find you later. I didn't answer her. I just walked out of the coffee shop. Back at the office, I got back to work. Before leaving for the day, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls from Julia. I hadn't answered any of them. I didn't expect her to be waiting for me downstairs. Her red sedan was parked by the entrance. She was leaning against the door, anxiously checking her phone. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward and grabbed my hand. What are you still doing here? I tried to pull away, but she gripped my hand tighter, refusing to let go. Let go of me. Julia forced a smile, her grip unyielding. Ethan, you always hated how much time I spent at the lab. Well, I took the day off to be with you, but you never answered your phone. I've been waiting here all afternoon. There was an unmistakable note of grievance in her voice. Waiting. That was the one thing Julia had taught me how to do better than anyone. In college, our friends used to joke that I was her shadow, always trailing behind her. It was the same after we got married, but the periods of waiting grew longer, harder to endure. A few years ago, she was working day and night at the lab and developed terrible stomach problems. It took me months of careful cooking to nurse her back to health. The first time I met Kyle, I was still bringing her lunch every day. The sun was blistering that afternoon as I stood outside her building, clutching a thermal container. Julia wasn't answering her phone, so I got permission from the security guard to go up and find her. "You're Dr. Vance's husband?" the guard asked, letting me through. "Man, you've got it made. Stay home, cook for the wife. She brings home the big bucks. How'd a guy like you land someone like her anyway?" His words were a mix of envy and contempt. I flinched. The glass door reflected my image. Unshaven, hair a mess, dressed in a worn-out t-shirt. Standing next to the impossibly polished Dr. Julia Vance, I looked completely out of place. A sour feeling rose in my chest. I had been up since dawn, making her lunch before my own workday started. I hadn't even had time to shave. "I have a job," I started to say, but the guard's voice boomed past me as he waved at someone behind me. "Hey, Dr. Vance, your house husband's here with your lunch." Julia emerged from the elevator, surrounded by a crowd of adoring colleagues. Kyle was right behind her, young and handsome, his hair perfectly styled. His eyes were fixed on Julia. In the crush of people, someone bumped into her. Kyle's arm shot out, wrapping around her waist to steady her. "Careful, Julia." The guard chuckled, his eyes mocking me. A bead of sweat rolled down my forehead and into my eye, stinging fiercely. Julia walked over to me. She gave the guard a polite nod, but didn't even acknowledge me. She addressed me with the cool detachment of someone giving orders to the help. "We're having a team lunch today. You don't need to bring me food anymore. It's not really to my taste. I'll just order from somewhere nearby." From behind her, Kyle peeked out, a smirk playing on his lips. "You must be Ethan, right? We're all going out to eat. Why don't you join us? I'm sure the others wouldn't mind an outsider tagging along." Julia frowned at him. "Kyle, don't worry about him. Just go home," she said to me, her eyes sweeping over my disheveled appearance. "And when you have some free time, you should really clean yourself up a bit." I waited a long time that day. The carefully prepared 3-course meal I'd made was nearly spoiled by the time I finally ate it that afternoon. That night, the stomachache was so bad I was doubled over in bed, my tossing and turning waking her up. When she found out I'd eaten the lunch she'd rejected, she told me to go sleep on the couch. "I have an important seminar tomorrow morning. How am I supposed to rest with you carrying on like this? Thank God I didn't eat your food." Thinking back on it now, it was just laughable. Julia was right about one thing. My head used to be filled with nonsense, and all of it had to do with her. I looked at the Julia standing in front of me now. She managed a smile, and it looked almost pleading. "Ethan, let's go home." It was rush hour. I could see familiar faces from my office walking by. I didn't want to get into it with her here. I nodded, not resisting anymore. But back at the apartment, my demeanor remained distant. Julia took off her coat and watched me busy myself in the kitchen. She seemed to relax, her tone becoming light and playful. "I knew it. You've just been bored lately, looking for trouble. You know, I could probably find you a different job if you want." She came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Her warm breath tickled my ear, but I recoiled, stepping away. I walked past her holding a single bowl of pasta. She froze. "Ethan, you didn't make me anything? You said you don't like my cooking." The smile on her face cracked. The anger she had been suppressing finally erupted. "You, Ethan, don't push your luck. What the hell do you want from me?" I swallowed the food in my mouth and looked at her calmly. "Sign the papers. Let's get a divorce." Julia's anger turned into a hysterical laugh. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You're going to regret this." She grabbed her coat and slammed the door on her way out. Julia didn't come back that night. The next morning, I took the day off, met with the realtor, and signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment. I had movers there by the afternoon. The home we had shared for years was slowly emptied out. It was only then that I realized how few traces of Julia there were in it at all. I had 2 days of perfect quiet. I was no longer anxious at work. I wasn't distracted, wasn't waiting to see if Julia would come home today. I closed a huge deal, and my department had announced that the new VP wanted to take us all out to celebrate. My coworkers cheered. I was in a great mood, too. The commission on this deal would be significant. My salary wasn't high, and I used to give most of my income to Julia. Now that I was renting on my own, money was tight. My good mood was shattered by a call from Julia. "You moved out without my permission? Ethan, are you serious about this?" That condescending tone. I was so sick of hearing it. I hung up on her. When she called back, I didn't answer. After leaving work early, about a dozen of us from the department went to a nearby gastropub. Our manager took a call and announced that the VP was on her way over. I felt a knot of anxiety. The VP was new, transferred from corporate, and our department reported directly to her. I've been in such a fog lately that I'd barely even seen her. One of my coworkers, already a few beers in, nudged me with his shoulder. You know, he said with a grin, I guess you could say she's your knight in shining armor. Before I could figure out what he meant, the door opened and Sarah Tang walked in. She was in her early 30s, dressed in a sharp business suit, with a warm, approachable smile. Sarah's eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on me, she smiled. And then it clicked. She was the one who had taken me to the hospital. As the night wound down, I watched a coworker rush off after his wife called to check on him. For a moment, everything felt blurry. I realized that in all our years together, no matter how late I worked, Julia had never once worried. When I'd asked her about it, she'd said, "You're a grown man. Can't you take care of yourself? Stop being so dramatic and just get home." I used to envy other couples, their easy affection and concern for one another. Julia had just sneered, a dark look on her face, and told me it wasn't too late to back out. She was right. It wasn't too late. I chuckled to myself and was about to call an Uber when the window of a car parked at the curb rolled down. It was Sarah Tang. She waved me over. "Ethan, it's late. Let me give you a ride." I tried to decline, but she insisted, saying that as a manager, she was responsible for her team's safety. I paused, then got into the passenger seat. Sarah was an easy conversationalist. She praised my work on the recent deal, mentioning how impressed the client was. She talked about everything under the sun, but she never once brought up the pathetic state she'd found me in that day. When she dropped me off, I thanked her sincerely. "Sarah, thank you for the ride tonight and for the other day, for taking me to the hospital." Her smile deepened. "It was nothing. Just take care of yourself. We need you at your best." It was nearly midnight by the time I got home. I checked my phone and saw that besides Julia's missed calls, my mom had tried to reach me too. I was debating whether to call her back when the phone rang again. "Ethan, Julia called me. She said you moved out. What's going on?" My mother's voice was tight with worry. "Ethan." I was silent for a moment before telling her the truth. When I first brought Julia home, my parents were stunned, then overjoyed. She was beautiful, brilliantly educated, with a prestigious career already lined up. She was the kind of daughter-in-law the entire neighborhood would envy. My mother had even pulled me aside, whispering, asking if Julia was pregnant. At first, they adored her. They rarely visited, not wanting to intrude on our lives. But then my father passed away unexpectedly. We booked the first flight home, but Julia got held up by a call from the lab. That was one of the few times I ever truly fought with her. I flew home alone. My mother didn't ask any questions, which only made her cry harder. Julia finally showed up late, but she made it to the funeral. On the phone now, my mother let out a long sigh. I expected her to yell at me, to tell me to apologize to Julia, to save my marriage at all costs. Instead, she just told me to take care of myself. If things got too hard, I could always come home. "You've been through enough, honey." I rarely cried, but after I hung up, the tears came. Right on cue, a text from Julia arrived. "Ethan, did you talk to your mother? You know her health isn't good. Are you going to make an old woman pay the price for your childish tantrum?" So this was her strategy when she got desperate. Emotional blackmail. I texted back a single word. "Go to hell." Knowing her pride, she wouldn't contact me again. I blocked her new number. Just in case, I consulted a lawyer about how to file for divorce. Julia didn't show up again for a few days, but then her mother cornered me outside my office. My mother-in-law had never approved of me. She'd once told me to my face that apart from my looks, I was worthless. My education, my family, my career, none of it was good enough for her daughter. And yet, Julia had married me. I used to wonder why she'd said yes to my proposal. I finally remembered a joke she'd once made. "Ethan's low maintenance. I don't have to waste energy trying to please him. It's so much easier that way." I had been so blinded by love, I just laughed it off as a joke. Now, her mother's face was a mask of fury. She demanded to know why I wasn't at home, saying no real man would pack up and leave over a little disagreement. I didn't argue. I just asked her, "Where's Julia?" Julia knew what her mother was like. If she'd sent her to ambush me, she'd be waiting nearby to reap the rewards. My daughter has important things to do. She's not some freeloader like you. If you know what's good for you, you'll go and apologize to her right now. Otherwise, don't you ever think you can set foot in my house again, she shrieked. A kept man, and you've got the nerve to act proud. I bet the reason Julia doesn't have kids is because there's something wrong with you. Ethan, I never should have let her marry you, she shrieked. Her shrill voice was attracting attention. I had put up with her for years. I was done. I already sent the divorce agreement to your daughter. Why don't you do us all a favor and convince her to sign it? As for kids, your daughter said she wanted to be child-free, but then told me I should be the one to get a vasectomy. Maybe you should ask her if the problem is on her end, and she's just using me as a cover. I knew the words were ugly, that she wouldn't be able to stand it. Sure enough, as she clutched her chest and started cursing me, Julia appeared. Ethan, do you have to be so disgusting? Julia supported her mother, glaring at me. Her mother pointed a trembling finger at my nose. Divorce him. Divorce him right now. Let's see who else would ever marry a pathetic loser like you. Before I could respond, Julia cut her off. Mom, stay out of this. She calmed her mother down, then turned to me, a pleading look in her eyes. Ethan, just come home with me. I ignored her, my gaze cold as I looked at the two of them. Let me know when you're ready to sign the papers. I turned and walked into the building, Julia's voice calling my name behind me. Security, please remove the individuals causing a disturbance at the entrance. Sarah Tang appeared out of nowhere. The crowd of onlookers scattered. The security guards suddenly became very diligent, blocking Julia from following me. I didn't look back. I went to my desk and focused on my work. Thankfully, my coworkers who had witnessed the scene didn't say a word and treated me as if nothing had happened. But Julia wouldn't give up. She started waiting for me outside my office every day at closing time. Even if I immediately got in a taxi and left, she would follow close behind in her car. That's how she found my new address. The next morning, she was waiting for me at the entrance to my apartment complex. I couldn't help but ask her, what about your experiments? What about your project? She mumbled, looking away. I'll get back to it after you come home. I just laughed coldly, got into a taxi, and left her standing there. Putting Julia's harassment aside, my performance at work was better than ever. My boss told me to prepare a report for the VP's office. A promotion and a raise were on the table. After we discussed business, Sarah complimented me, saying I looked much healthier and that my suit fit me well. She knew a great, authentic Italian place and invited me to dinner. I made an excuse about having plans and politely declined. I could sense her interest, and while I was grateful for her kindness, that was all it could be. After leaving Julia, I finally had the time and energy to focus on myself. Looking in the mirror, I saw glimpses of the energetic young man I'd been in college. But back then, all my courage had been for her, for that untouchable flower on the mountaintop. Now it was just for me. Sarah gently asked if I needed any help, saying she knew Julia had been relentless. I declined her offer. One marriage had already consumed 10 years of my life. In the next 10, I had a lot to accomplish. I didn't have time to spare for anyone else. After several months of this, one day Julia didn't show up outside my office. A pregnant colleague joked that I was finally a free man. I breathed a sigh of relief. She was laughing as she handed over some files to me when her smile suddenly froze. She clutched her stomach. I rushed her to the hospital. While I was waiting outside her room, I saw Julia and Kyle. Kyle's hand was wrapped in gauze. When he saw me, his expression was a mix of surprise, resentment, and a smug satisfaction. Julia just stared at me in a panic. She let go of Kyle's arm and walked towards me, flustered. Ethan, what are you doing here? I was just bringing him for a checkup. It was rare to see her so completely disarmed. I found myself watching her with a detached curiosity. I guess you haven't heard. Julia and I are living together now. Kyle's voice, no longer mild-mannered, was like a rooster crowing in victory. Ethan, if you have any self-respect, you'll leave her alone. Stop holding her back. Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused? All the meetings she's missed, the delays to the project, all because of you. Kyle, shut up. Julia shook her head frantically. It's not what he's saying, Ethan. That night, I called you, but you didn't answer. I was drunk, and I ended up at his place. He forced himself on me. As if afraid I wouldn't believe her, she shoved Kyle away from her hard. Julia, how could you say that to me? Kyle stumbled back into the wall. The impact knocked the bandage from his hand, revealing a series of angry, red lines crisscrossing his wrist. The wounds reopened, and blood dripped onto the floor. He slid down the wall, trembling from pain and blood loss. Julia froze, staring at the scene as if paralyzed. I stood up to get a doctor. Julia, jolted back to life, grabbed my arm. Ethan, don't go. The disgust I felt was overwhelming. I ripped my arm away and slapped her across the face. Julia, if you have a single brain cell left, you'll get him some help now. She clutched her cheek, her body trembling as she nodded. Nurses and doctors, hearing the commotion, were already rushing over, wheeling Kyle into an emergency room. Julia looked at me, then at Kyle being pushed down the hall, still weakly calling her name. Just then, my colleague came out of the examination room and jumped in surprise at the sight of Julia. I looked at Julia one last time and said my final goodbye. Signed the papers. Her eyes were red and filled with tears. I turned my back on her, helped my colleague, and left the hospital. It was only much later that I learned what had happened. Kyle had been struggling with depression and had been self-harming. By then, I had been promoted to manager of a branch office. I used my year-end bonus to take my mother on a trip abroad. After the divorce was finalized, I never looked for news about Julia again. The next time I saw her name, it was in a local news alert. Prominent researcher attempts suicide, rescued from institute rooftop. The photo they used wasn't blurred. The man teetering on the edge of the roof was unmistakably Kyle. As the story blew up, rumors started to fly. Julia had used him and thrown him away, driving her brilliant assistant to a mental breakdown. My own marriage to her was dragged into the light. Someone leaked that our marriage had ended because of an affair between Julia and her assistant. In an instant, the public sympathy for Kyle evaporated. The internet was filled with comments saying they both got what they deserved. A few days later, the Institute issued a formal statement. Julia was dismissed from her position and transferred to an obscure post. I felt a brief, distant sense of pity. My colleague, the one I had taken to the hospital, gave birth to a beautiful set of twins. She made me their godfather. Her husband and I became good friends, and we often took the kids to the park together. One afternoon, he went to find a restroom, leaving me with the stroller. I was leaning over, making funny faces at the babies when a hoarse voice called my name. Ethan. I looked up. It was Julia. She was skeletal, her face gaunt and aged, as if 10 years had passed in one. She stared at me. Then her gaze drifted to the stroller. Long time no see. An unspeakable sadness filled her eyes. Yes, she murmured. A long time. You have children now. I didn't bother to correct her. I just offered a polite smile. The silence stretched between us, thick with awkwardness. I started to push the stroller away. Ethan, she called out desperately from behind me. I never got together with Kyle. That night was a mistake. I never loved him. I paused for a second. Is that so? I said without turning around. What does that have to do with me? I sent a text to my friend, telling him I'd meet him up ahead. Then I started walking. Faintly, from behind me, I could hear the sound of someone crying, a desperate, broken sound. I didn't look back. I just kept walking forward, leaving it all behind.